Once again, Matt Walsh and the Daily Wire show how well they can expose leftist hypocrisy and the falsity of so-called care through the force of government. Yeah, now admittedly, Walsh skewered an infamously outrageous leftist, but in pulling the mask off of AOC's virtue signaling about her abuela, aka grandmother, they gave us a bigger lesson about not just leftist politicians, but left-leaning media figures as well. Hi everyone, I'm Gardner Goldsmith for MRC-TV. Well, it started on June 2nd when Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democrat of New York, tweeted a statement and photos that perhaps were intended to wring political leverage out of the hearts of suckers. The two photos showed a mostly empty room that appeared to have a few leaks in the ceiling, as well as a few buckets and a repair tarp on the floor, and her statement read, cue the violins please, "Just over a week ago, my abuela," her grandmother, "fell ill. I went to Puerto Rico to see her, my first time in a year plus because of COVID. This is her home. Hurricane Maria relief hasn't arrived. Trump blocked relief money for Puerto Rico. People are being forced to flee ancestral homes, and developers are taking them." A statement which clearly shows how she really cares about the plight of her grandma and all the others suffering or losing their homes in Puerto Rico. On the other hand, it also inspired some major questions. For example, if AOC is so concerned about people losing their homes, why didn't she speak out about the mostly leftist governors and city bureaucrats who instituted business-killing lockdowns contrary to the U.S. Constitution over the past year? Now, they've put people on the brink of losing their homes too. Perhaps she's just waiting for a bailout proposal to hurt even more people by taking their money to give it to those who've already been hurt by government. Now, she seems far less interested in following the rules she swore to uphold in the Constitution than she is in virtue signaling and laying blame on the very government system she promotes and constantly wants to expand. And on the subject of virtue signaling, given that Ocasio-Cortez is a congresswoman who has zipped ping-pong-like back and forth across numerous states to hang out at numerous protests and rallies in New York during COVID, as she says, what prevented her from visiting Puerto Rico, even to just see her abuela from more than 6 feet away? At public appearances in New York, she's broken that magic, mystical social distancing barrier. But even if she wanted to keep up the distancing charade, she could have taped 2 yardsticks together and visited Grandma in Puerto Rico. Now, others online have noted that Ms. Ocasio-Cortez has a lot of gall blaming others for her grandma's poor living conditions when the congresswoman draws a 6-figure paycheck off tax slaves who don't have her political clout and would never have been allowed to go from the mainland to Puerto Rico to check on their own grandmas unless they'd been in her expensive taxpayer-funded shoes. Now, some folks remember that Alexandria owns a $59,000 Tesla. They remember because in mid-May, she got caught parking it in a restricted spot. Others recall that she has a swanky apartment because, well, she's shown it in videos like her infamous "What's this?" clip, wherein she encountered an alien device called a sink garbage disposal unit.
I am told this is a garbage disposal. I've never seen a garbage disposal. I never had one in any place I've ever lived. It is terrifying. I don't know what to use it for.
Others remember with wonderful fondness the $14,000 outfit she donned for a 2020 Vanity Fair cover shoot. Clothes that were admittedly rented, but which a socialist like her might have trouble justifying as attire, given that she slams the very ultra-rich 1% who can afford such threats. And of course, there were her $65 tax the rich sweatshirts, a capitalist method to destroy capitalism. But of course, her attempt to sell high-priced shirts only actually highlighted the important capitalist principle of productivity leading to surplus that can then be spent on new endeavors, even on luxuries like anti-capitalist sweatshirts. The Daily Wire's Matt Walsh noticed AOC's multiple vectors of hypocrisy and decided to do something about it. First, he tweeted to her, quote, "Shameful that you live in luxury while allowing your own grandmother to suffer in these squalid conditions." Then on June 4th, he started a fundraiser to save AOC's abuela's ancestral home. Walsh tweeted this to get things rolling. Quote, "As you've heard, at AOC's abuela is living in a dilapidated home that was ravaged by Hurricane Maria. AOC is unable to help her own grandma for whatever reason, so I've set up this GoFundMe campaign to save her home. Please give if you can. #HelpAbuela. And the fundraiser garnered thousands of positive participants, all in less than 12 hours, all showing how private initiative can directly help people and how government force isn't charity in any way whatsoever. Then, well, it was shut down. As Daily Wire's Ash Scow reports, quote, "More than 5,800 people pledged to help Ocasio-Cortez's grandmother, raising just over $100,000 in 10 hours before the fundraiser was shut down. All this in response to the Congresswoman suggesting that rather than taking direct action to help her grandmother, the most important role she played in the situation was to decry, quote, systemic injustice, end quote." Yeah, AOC was allowing her grandmother to suffer so that she could make a point about systemic injustice. That would be the system she actually wants to expand, the system that's supposed to operate according to her so-called U.S. Constitution, which doesn't allow handouts of cash to any civilian in a state or a territory or a so-called colony, as AOC depicts Puerto Rico. By showing her abuela's situation and not changing it, it seems indeed that she was more interested in virtue signaling and taking money from other people. Indeed, as well as Scow notes, AOC tweeted this snide remark to Walsh, quote, "My abuela is okay, but instead of only caring for mine and letting others suffer, I'm calling attention to the systemic injustices you seem totally fine with in having a U.S. colony." It's like our World War II. Global warming, it's like our World War II. No, it's not like World War II, AOC. My dad was in World War II. It's completely unlike World War II. Which completely overlooks the fact that Walsh was trying to help directly. But AOC wasn't alone in turning someone's help into a perceived attack. Of course she wasn't. On June 5th, Walsh noticed that The Independent of the UK decided to depict his effort not as charitable, but as an attack. Tweeting their headline, this was what popped up in Walsh's feed. His quote of The Independent, quote, "Right-wing blogger launches GoFundMe for AOC's grandmother in latest personal attack. You keep putting your face against my fist. What are you doing? You're attacking my fist with your face." So let's help the editors and writers of The Independent. Asking for voluntary donations and offering to help someone is not an attack. Forcing taxpayers in completely different parts of the continent to pay for a bureaucratic state-run behemoth is an attack. Yeah. And then, of course, there's The Hill, which showed just about as much journalistic integrity as The Independent in its report on the story. You see, Lexi Lonis of The Hill opted not to tell readers about who took the initiative to stop the fundraiser. Lexi focused on using the passive voice rather than the active voice. And that's something that's typical for those involved in politics or those involved in covering for their political allies. Ms. Lonis wrote, quote, "A GoFundMe launched by a conservative writer targeting Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has been halted after the crowdfunding campaign raised more than $100,000 for the New York Democrats' grandmother." Ah, yes, the evil targeting fundraiser has been halted. Halted by whom? It took Walsh to serve up the actual answer. Of course, we can figure who halted the fundraiser. Quote, update. Someone in AOC's Abuela's family told GoFundMe that she won't take the money, even though AOC previously claimed that her grandma was in dire straits and it was Trump's fault. @AOC still hasn't acknowledged this effort or thanked us. Here's the email from GoFundMe. And Walsh provided a screenshot of the email in which GoFundMe explains that when a recipient declines to accept funds, GoFundMe ends the campaign and refunds donations. So the great Abuela saga ends. Or does it? The government waste and idiocy continues. And thanks to Walsh, we've been given not only a great example of just how much leftists care on a personal level, but of how some so-called reporters will shade stories to fit their preferred emotional spin. Meanwhile, people continue to suffer, and bureaucracy and tax theft are depicted by politicians and media hypesters as so-called help. Hey, thank you so much for watching, everyone. Remember, if you're watching on YouTube, please make sure that you're still subscribed. Hit the like button and share these with friends. Share these everywhere you can. Share these like the wisdom of understanding free markets. Share and share if you can, as much as possible. And if you get the opportunity, go to Rumble, because all our videos are housed there. And in case anything happens on the major video platform everyone knows, you can head over to Rumble and see us there. You can share from there as well. We'd love to see more people subscribed at Rumble. You can always find us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook. And you can find us all the time at MRCTV.org. That's MRCTV.org. For MRC TV, I'm Gardner Goldsmith.